Right, hello again. It is still Saturday the 7th of May. Nothing changes in that respect, but we will crack on with another one. So we've gone down the coast, so we did Clynelish, we've done Balblair, and then we've done Dalwhinnie, and let's go a little bit further down the coast. Let's not quite go into Inverness and go here. So it might look like it's Inverness because I've zoomed out on the map a bit, but it's actually a peninsula just above Inverness. So Inverness is kind of, it goes in and then back out, and it's a little peninsula that comes out just above Inverness, which is actually called the Black Isle. And this distillery is like at the base of that peninsula, called Glen Ord. Can't open it. Now Glen Ord was founded in 1838 by two guys called Robert Johnston and Donald McClellan and Robert Johnston. So 1838 they founded the distillery. Unfortunately they went bankrupt in 1847, so they didn't do particularly well. It's had various owners, nothing particularly stands out until 1930 when a company called Scottish Malt Distillers bought the distillery. Now Scottish Malt Distillers, through various takeovers, eventually became a company that most people probably have heard of because they've got one or two drinks brands called Diageo. So Diageo is quite an important distillery to Diageo, because this is one of the very few distilleries in Scotland that still do their own floor maltings in house. So they're malting the barley. Not many distilleries are still doing it. A lot of companies, it's a lot of like separate companies that are doing it themselves that are selling it to distilleries. So for Diageo, it's quite good for them to have this because they can then use the floor maltings to be able to go to their other distilleries as well, because they've got one or two quite big brands that they need to keep up as well. So this particular Glen Ord is one from Andrew Butler, who's here, who donated this amongst about 1 billion others. And this particular one, as a Glen Ord representation, technically is the standard Glen Ord, but isn't actually the one that's around anymore. So this is what the bottle looks like of the sample that he's given me, which was a standard 12-year-old Glen Ord, and it was like a standard bottling, and it was very, very popular. And a lot of people were a bit bemused when Diageo did their Classic Malts range, where they had Lagavulin as the Isla, and Talisker as the Islands, and Glenkinchie as the Lowland. The obvious choice for the Highland, because they'd already got Speyside, which was Oban, was to have Glen Ord as the Highland. But they didn't. They picked Dalwhinnie, which technically is a Speyside. If you sort of look at it on a map, it's more often than not, Dalwhinnie's kind of included in the Speyside ones. So they're kind of like, well, why not Glen Ord? It seems like the obvious one to do. Again, it's a very popular whiskey, and it's highly regarded. And there's a lot of arguments saying, do you know what, Glen Ord is a better one than Dalwhinnie. Why didn't they just go with that? Anyway, so this was the standard 12-year-old, but in 2007 it was discontinued, and they have a line. Diageo have a line of Scotch malt whiskies that in a range called the Singleton. So it's the Singleton of something. So there was a Singleton of a Croysk, a Singleton of Dufftown, and there's a Singleton of Glen Ord, and this is predominantly for the Asian market. So you can find it over here, but it's difficult to get hold of. There's not that much of it, and you're probably paying a little bit over the odds because they're shipping most of it out in Asia. So in terms of price, couldn't tell you, to be perfectly honest, because there isn't many places over here that are selling it because it's getting shipped out to Japan and China and all those places. So this particular one now is, you're looking at about 100 quid a bottle for this. So Andrew, thank you very much, because I know this isn't a particularly cheap one, simply because it being discontinued, the stocks are getting harder and harder, so that's what's putting the price up. So it is 40%, I think. I can't actually see it on this label, and I forgot to write it down. So it's been a long time since I've had Glen Ord. I really can't remember what it's like. But there is a nice deep colour to it. But it's kind of it's like wet hay, dark colour. You know, like when hay gets wet, and straw and hay get wet and it gets like kind of really dark. It's like that kind of colour. It's nice. Ooh, there's a nice freshness on the nose though. It's not quite hay. Well, no, actually, no, it might be hay. Yeah, I'd almost go with like a slightly damp straw, damp hay on there, but it's a little bit fresher than that. So it's almost slightly minty, slightly fragrant, like a jasmine on there as well. But there's a nice sweetness, and there's a really subtle sort of Christmas cakey, but it's not too obvious. It's a lovely fresh nose though, with a really nice gentle sweetness to it. Doesn't quite follow through on the palate. Bit of woodiness has just kicked in as well. Just on the finish, there's a little oakiness that just follows through right at the end. It's not quite as intense on the palate as I was hoping it would be, because the nose is fantastic. That nose promises a hell of a lot, and it's just not quite there on the palate. Very, very smooth. There's a nice sweetness to it. It finishes with a dry oakiness. There's a plumminess to it. Not so much of the freshness that was there on the nose. So the mintiness, jasmine, that kind of fragrant element that's on the nose isn't really there on the palate. It's almost like it's just a little bit washed out. It's nice. It's very, very easy drinking. But this oakiness does really kick in at the end and just dries everything out. A little bit too overpowering, to be perfectly honest. If that was just tempered down a bit, it would be a very, very good whiskey. Not a very, very, it would be a very good whiskey in terms of it's very, very smooth. It's just lacking something, just lacking a little boost of either sweetness or that fragrant element that's on the nose. One of those things, if it just lifted a bit more onto the floor, up onto the fore, it would be fantastic. And unfortunately, the oakiness that kicks in at the end, it's just a little bit too drying. It's just ever so slightly unbalanced. It's so close to being an absolute cracker. And it's just slightly off. Not a lot, to be honest, not by a lot. You won't have any bad times with this whiskey. It's just, it's about 95% of the way to being absolutely really, really good. But that 5% is just knocking it off just a touch. There are bits, there's a raisiness to it. There is a maltiness to it. It's very soft, it's very easy drinking. It's just not quite enough. And then all of a sudden this wave of oakiness comes in at the end and just dries everything off and sort of kills it a little bit. Which is a shame. It's a real shame because it starts off fantastically. And that nose is wonderful. That nose is really, really good. And it just lets it down a little bit. And then on the finish, it just goes bleh. That's a shame. That is a shame because that could have been fantastic. Anyway, maybe that's why they discontinued it. Maybe that singleton of Glen Ord, they've got everything right, but they're not giving it to us. They're giving it to the Asians. If you're out in Asia and you've had the singleton of Glen Ord, let me know. Let me know what you think of it. Let me know if it sounds like it's better than the one that I've just had, or if you've had both, that would be even better. If you could do a direct comparison, that would be fantastic. Right, another one down, another 200 odd to go and a bit more, and I shall see you in the next one. Cheers.